Now we are on Corn Market Street, where Falun Gong practitioners are telling people what's going on in China. Corn Market Street is really lively, where people from all over the world are passing the stands. Also Chinese people, but unfortunately they are too scared to come closer and ask what's going on, because it's still forbidden in China.
The Chinese regime has used all means available to terrorize and pressure people to renounce their faith. For those of us a nation with a democratically elected government, freedom of belief is considered to be one of the most basic universal rights. But in China, such fundamental human rights are rarely protected.
It's a shame that it's not publicised, because so many people don't know it's happening.
Party who was in charge of China at the time, and they maybe felt a bit threatened by the fact that it was so popular.
I think everybody should be able to practice whatever they like.
As an anthropologist, I would argue that the Falun Gong movement has the right to exist, has freedom of speech and freedom of belief. So the fact they have been suppressed and many have been imprisoned, I would argue with the government in Beijing, is a basic breaking of their human rights, and they should recognize the UN Charter for Human Rights, which allows people the right of belief and freedom of expression, and the Falun Gong do not have those rights.
Every Sunday, Falun Gong practitioners are coming to the Haddington Park to practice the exercises. It doesn't matter which weather, they continue the practice.
Falun Gong is a system of cultivation in which practitioners seek to achieve moral, physical and spiritual enlightenment through a life of principled living and positive personal development. Introduced to the public in 1992 by Mr. Li Hongshe, Falun Gong quickly grew to become the most popular form of Qigong China had ever known. The Chinese government declared Falun Gong illegal since July 1999 and has engaged in a campaign of propaganda and persecution against the practitioners. Why would this happen?
That was the idea of Jiang Zemin. He was the leader at the time. And some people say it's because there were just too many people practicing. It started off in the year 92 from the beginning with no one, and then by the year 1999 there were 70 to 100 million people practicing Falun Gong just by word of mouth. And there's only 60 million card-carrying communist members in the Chinese Communist Party. So I think he was terrified of the numbers. There was no threat to the government, but they just need to control everything. It's just that a one-party state, it just has to control everything. Also, generally in those types of regimes, they need a focus. They need the population to focus on something and fight against. They need to struggle. Persecution began. The Chinese Communist Party has control over all the media and every aspect of the media in China. So they can use emotive words to describe Falun Gong. And then, because it's the only point of reference, the Western media use the same words. And of course, they're designed to strike fear into people.
To date, there are 3,024 documented cases of healthy practitioners being beaten and tortured to the death while in detention. According to organ harvesting report between 2001 to 2006 in China, evidence has been uncovered that Falun Gong practitioners in the thousands are killed so that their organs could be sold for profit, even to foreign transplant tourists. So what are the experts' opinions towards human rights situation in China?
At Oxford University, and every summer my students tell me that it's getting worse in many cases, that they as students have to be very careful what they say. They cannot publish things that are critical of government policy. They can't publish things that are critical, for example, of problems with pollution. They have to be quiet in what they say or do it secretly. So I would say that although China is now more open than it used to be, in part because of trade and commerce, it's not actually very open when it comes to people's rights to express themselves. The UK could, through the United Nations, say that if China does not improve its human rights situation, they will restrict trade with China, and the European Union should do the same thing. But because the EU makes money from China and through China, and China in fact has helped the UK and other governments through the financial crisis, they are very reluctant to be critical of the government in Beijing.
Practitioners and supporters of Falun Gong around the world continue their peaceful efforts to stop the persecution in China. This is Lisa Gelisa from Oxford.